Hello, everyone out there in Facebook land. Welcome to the third and final roundtable conversation as part of our Another Day with You campaign. We have talked about understanding suicide. We have talked about how we can help when it comes to suicide prevention and making sure that people have access to mental health resources. And today we're going to be talking about the stories that we tell around suicide and suicide loss, and just giving people the opportunity to be able to think a little bit about how they share their story, what that might look like, why it's important to even talk about it at all. So I failed to get my desktop set up before we started, but let me grab my doc here with all of the announcements. So we are currently here in the United States in National Suicide Prevention Month, which is the month of September. 2 weeks ago was National Suicide Prevention Week, and World Suicide Prevention Day was on September 10th. And so in honor of this time of awareness, each year we do a campaign, and we choose a statement and we rally people around that statement as a way of sharing hope and encouraging people to have conversations, to talk about suicide, and to point people toward help. So this year's phrase was "Another Day with You" is another day with you. The campaign is still going. We're still in this present moment. And so we're wrapping that up as we come to the end of September, which is kind of hard to wrap my brain around, that October begins next week. Today is the first day of fall. Here we are. But we want the conversation to continue even after this month. And so we hope that you will continue to share this message of hope, to talk about suicide in a way that reminds people that there is help, and that you will continue to help us change the numbers around suicide. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. You can find all of the information about this campaign on our website at TWLOHA.com/WSPD. And on there, you will also find links to the things that I'm about to talk about. But our fantastic friend and my teammate Kayla will be dropping some of these links as well in the comments. But our WSPD pack, the Another Day with You pack, which has this shirt, which is always hard to show on a live stream, but you can still purchase that shirt, this shirt, and that comes with our conversation cards. It comes with a response card. It comes with stickers, I believe. So you will be able to purchase that through the end of September at least. And so you can do that online through our store. We ship worldwide, which is awesome. And the pack is created as a way for you to have tools to help you start those conversations, especially with those conversation cards. There's literally questions that you can ask of your friends or your loved ones sitting in your car or on a Zoom conversation or wherever that might happen. So you can continue to do that. And then the other big part of our campaign every year is raising funds that go directly into treatment and recovery through our treatment and recovery scholarships, which help us provide counseling and higher levels of care for folks. And then also our Find Help tool, which is a way for people to connect with local, affordable mental health resources. So we had a goal this year of raising $250,000. And as of today, we have raised $265,000, which is incredible. And so we want to help as many people as possible to be able to get access to the mental health support that they need and deserve. So you can continue to fundraise or donate through the end of September. Again, all of the links will be in the comments, but then also at TWLOHA.com/WSPD to be able to do that and participate in the campaign. $250,000 was going to let us provide over 3,500 hours of counseling and scholarships for that higher level of care. And so every dollar that's added, and then connecting thousands of people to our Find Help tool every month. So every dollar that's added is just more people that will be able to help through those different resources. Before I bring on our guests, I do want to just make a note and acknowledge the fact that suicide can be a heavy topic depending on your life experiences and where you are in this current moment. So if today's discussion gets heavy and you need to step away, please feel free to do that. The Facebook will keep the recording of this forever. It will be available for you to come back to if you want to, when you're in a space where you are able to continue to listen to the conversation, or if you want to have a friend sit and listen with you, feel free to do that. Please take care of yourself. That is what is most important in this moment. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guests. So if you were with us last week, I wound up having to somewhat at the last minute host our conversation. But this week we have Patrick Miranda, who you may recognize from some of the videos that have been floating around for the WSPD campaign this year. And I think, have you made appearances in videos before? Or was this the first year? Patrick?
I think this might be the first year that I've done it. Yeah.
Okay. You're just so good that I just have assumed that you've been around forever. So Patrick will be handling the hosting duties for this conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and I'm going to disappear and be in the background where I prefer to be. So Patrick, take it away.
Thank you so much, Katie. All right. As Katie said, my name is Patrick Miranda, he, him pronouns. And I am a licensed therapist over in Chicago. So Illinois is where I call home right now. And I don't know that I need to say much here because this one isn't about me. This is about our lovely guest today. So why don't we go ahead and start, Stephanie, if you don't mind, who you are and what you kind of do in life.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Stephanie Wittels Wachs. I am the host of a podcast called Last Day, and I co-founded, and I'm our chief creative officer of Lemonada Media. That started out with one show, which was Last Day, and now has 21 shows that will be out by the end of this year. So we've been busy. So I'm working. That's what I'm doing. But yes, I'll tell you more about Last Day, but we started the show. I lost my brother to a heroin overdose in 2015. He was an amazing, beloved comedian. His name was Harris Wittels. If you like Parks and Recreation, you have seen his work. And we were left as a family wondering what we could have done differently and how we could have saved him or helped him, to not get to his last day. So the goal with the show is to zoom in on something and then to rewind the tape and figure out where along the way we could have done things differently if we could have. So we did 26 episodes of season 1. I learned a lot about addiction and the opioids epidemic specifically. And then in season 2, we tackled suicide and mental health. And now we are working on season 3 that is about gun violence in America. So we like to look at things that feel fraught, stigmatized, hard to understand, hard to explain, laden with big scary numbers and headlines, and try to get to the human beings that are underneath those headlines. So that's what I do.
Oh my, thank you so much, Stephanie. That's some heavy stuff that you're working with over there.
Super fun at parties. We tell jokes. We tell jokes on the show too. So let me just preface with that.
I work in the addictions field, and sometimes you have to tell jokes because things get too much emotionally.
Totally.
Wow. And also that link between suicide and substance use might come up today too. We'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. Why don't we go to Carrie, if you don't mind, introducing yourself, what you do in life?
Yeah, I'm Carrie Thompson. I am a teacher and a mom and a hiker, and I started writing after we lost our son. I lost my son, Ben, in 2019 in July and to suicide. And subsequent to that, my experiences with the grief, the loss, trying to understand the complexities around suicide kind of led me on this odyssey, including a cross-country relocation during the pandemic. this experience that I've had of not feeling like I was being heard and not feeling like my experiences were being respected has kind of made me into an advocate for trying to have a conversation about suicide loss, and also writing about the experiences, trying to discover for myself what this all means. And then hoping, I started sharing the story and people kept saying, hey, keep talking, because what you have to say is apparently I'm wiser than I feel sometimes. And so some of my writing has resonated with people. And as more people have talked to me about it, that's kind of where I'm at. So I consider myself sort of on a journey, and trying to figure out where I fit and what life after losing my son has become.
Wow. Thank you, Carrie. And we'll hop into hopefully some more about how suicide impacted you emotionally and what that's meant in the way you see life moving forward. But I want to give Garen a chance to talk about himself before we do that work.
Yeah, so my name is Garen, and I was a summer intern for To Write Love on Her Arms this past summer. And I'm also a current student at the University of South Carolina, and I'm studying filmmaking. My personal experience with suicide and mental health is that I tried to end my life before in the past. And since then, I've had to overcome like feelings of guilt and shamefulness, and like basically figure out how to take those emotions and use it, I guess, in a creative way, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's like the greatest way to describe that. But for me, writing about my experiences in a way has provided like healing and stuff for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of people, healing and processing emotion comes through creatively. And in fact, that sounds like what the group has done, either through exploring it in this filming, right? And these episodes looking and trying to explore what happened with the overdoses, or writing about your son's journey, Carrie. It seems like this is perhaps a creative bunch of people. So I think that's really important healing. Garen, you talked about guilt and shame. I know that in my work, right, the way we use words and language we use and really matters. And I think guilt and shame is something that surrounds all of these heavy things. How do you talk about this stuff? How do you talk about your experiences and mental health without really increasing that, without making it something that's shameful?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Garen, sorry.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's just been a journey of talking about it. Well, I guess before I got to the point of being able to talk about it, I had to find a small core group of people that anytime I did bring up my mental health, or I did want to talk about those experiences, they never, the only way they ever made me feel was safe. And so I guess finding someone to establish a safe space for me to talk about those experiences as much as I wanted to within that time period was really beneficial for me. I don't know if this is answering the question at all, or just like a little bit. I'm kind of nervous, but yeah. So I guess to dive a little bit deeper into that, to kind of explain what kind of made me feel guilty and shameful about my past experiences with that is growing up in a Black household, like a household basically as a person of color. I think my mom was raised in a way, and I feel like this is something that is very apparent in households of color, where you never really talked about your mental health, or you had to be stronger as a person of color, because if you showed any signs of weakness, people would really take that and run with it. And so anytime I expressed anything that dealt with mental health, my mom kind of just told me to like shrug it off and stuff like that. And that was never, I guess, what I felt like should have been the right answer. And so basically deconstructing that and actually diving into those conversations and going down that route of talking about that stuff is, I feel like I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but basically I had to deconstruct that and then figure out that safe space in order to talk about that stuff. So I think I'm going to stop there.
No, that answer was completely relevant in terms of guilt and shame. The messages we learn growing up is those societal things is really what determine what we think we can talk about and what we think we can't, right? That's what gives us those taboo thoughts. So I think you were right on track there, and working through that involves finding people who do care and that you can say it to without getting that sort of pushback, which, Carrie, that sounds like that's been part of your journey too, of not feeling heard. Do you want to say more on that?
Yeah, I had to kind of make myself be heard, you know? It's one of the reasons why I started writing. My first essay that I wrote was published out of basically duress. You know, I had a really bad experience with someone who tried to hug me, and I responded negatively because I didn't want to be. And it seemed like everything I did was being questioned because I had lost a son to suicide. And I had the nerve to say that I did. You know, we put it right in the paper. Had a lot of people like, why'd you do that? You know, I think it's becoming more of a thing, but, you know, my son's life was honest, and that's the way we felt. So my family and we talked about it, and, you know, like we wanted to make that part of the story. It's not the only part of his story. And we, you know, so I started writing to sort of just give me a space that I created for myself, you know, forcing that moment of somebody needs to just let people who've had experience with suicide have a chance to say their experience with it, as opposed to making all of these assumptions about us, you know? So yeah, I started writing as a way to assert that. I guess it kind of started with writing about Ben's obituary in the paper and putting that there. But then, you know, I published my first essay, and it resonated with people. Wow, that's a really interesting experience. And then I published another one about losing Ben and the question of why that happened, which I think is something that, you know, we struggle with, and understanding, sort of coming to a point of wisdom about that, or trying to. But I had a lot of people that made assumptions about how I was supposed to feel, and that was the piece that was just tough. You know, I actually had someone. I expressed some thoughts about trying to understand where Ben was at, and I was, oh, well, now that makes you suicidal too. And I'm like, I was never suicidal, but people thought that I was, because when you lose someone and you're the family, it's like that guilt and shame idea. It kind of like, I like to tell people that suicide is like sticky, you know, it has a residue and it can kind of like coat the experience that you have. And it's wrong to have that, because it says, you know, it's health, right? Mental health and physical health are not different. And that was the piece I think people kind of misconstrue. They separate the brain from the body and the feelings from the human. And I just wanted to make sure that was, you know, that experience that we have was respected. So that's kind of where I came to the idea. You know, having people question my own mental health because my son lost a battle with his mental health conditions. That was hurtful. And I wanted to, you know, I had someone tell me that I needed to find people. Garen, your comment about finding a space that was safe for you. I had someone tell me that I needed to find people who speak the language of suicide loss. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And it is the same sort of thing about finding people that are willing to allow you to express whatever it is you need to talk about and not judge that, you know? So that was a really important point. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I felt that because I have seen that too. Finding people that you know, finding your people that will not push back on you, that will just listen make you feel like you can say what you need to say.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the, I want to bring Stephanie into the conversation and then move on to that piece of how we make the conversations accessible, right? How you can create those safe spaces. What do those look like for you? But before that, Stephanie, you kind of made the whole life, like you've made it all public. You made this into media for everyone to sort of engage in that. Was there shame in that for you?
Yeah, I mean, shame is one of my primary colors as a human. So I touch deeply, resonates deeply with me. But Carrie, I had a similar experience as you. I lost Harris in 2015. I wrote his eulogy. The printer told me that I spent 26 hours on it. It was a way to really channel everything I was feeling. And I ended up writing an essay that went viral. And then I ended up writing a book. And it was the same thing. I wrote the book in 9 months, and I can't remember writing it. I was having some sort of out of body, like there's a lot of darkness and it needs to come out, right? And I've always created, I've always been an artist. So let's filter it through that lens again. And part of the thing about like sharing stories or telling stories or art, whatever medium, is like if there's not an authentic representation of that, if there's not an honesty in that, it's not going to work, right? It's gonna sort of fall flat. And there is always a dance you do with shame and fear in anything that you create, right? When it's so personal, starting in 2015, I haven't really creating things that come from my personal lived experience has been where I am. I'm getting to a point where I'm like ready to stop talking about me. And so doing season 2 and really, hearing other people's stories was so powerful. And having gone through the experience of telling my own story through the show, I always empathize with our guests who are coming in and like exposing all of their stuff. I resonated with so much of what the two of you said already. But we had to really frame in season 1 this idea that addiction is a disease, that it is a chronic illness, and that it needs to be dealt with in a medical framework, that the way that we deal with people who have substance use disorders, shunning them, saying get clean or else, pushing them out of our lives, dealing in shame. You've made this choice, you are failing. It's just so unbelievably counter to how we treat people when they are sick. And you would never say to a cancer patient, well, if you're not going to get clean, you're not going to clean up that body, we're going to kick you out. It's bananas to think about it that way. Mental health is the same thing. I mean, season 2, we dug into so much too about upstream intervention and how sort of like basic human needs are so tied in and tethered to our mental health. So, I mean, we talked about so much in season 2. We talked about this idea of suicide contagion. Is that real? Is that not real? How the media typically depicts suicide, how wrong they tend to get it. Childhood trauma, mental health emergencies, hopelessness, senior suicide, self-harm. What am I forgetting? QPR, addiction. I mean, so I mean, shame is like, it's part of the territory. And it's something that if you're talking to people who get it, you're like, yeah, shame. Also, let's keep going.
Yes. I think it starts as a barrier. Once you're someone who's lived in this, it's sort of we acknowledge that this is part of it. So let's look at some of the other aspects of this conversation of our own lives. Garen, you had this lived experience with mental health. And if we're talking about the shame and also the healing aspects, what was it for you that allowed you to, I know you talked about creating a safe space, but we're also talking about this mind-body connection, and it's not just the talking, but the having a safe place to live and having your basic needs met and all of these other things. Are there aspects of your healing that really stand out in terms of connecting that mind body?
I'm not really sure if there are any aspects that stand out, not for me anyway, because I don't think there was ever a point where I had all of those things at the same time. I think it was either, as an example, I felt like I had a safe space to live, but maybe I didn't have like that safe space of people to go to. So I felt like I went through different periods of having those at different times in my life, but from I guess the stuff that I learned when I had those things one at a time during those different periods, I guess that was enough for me to learn how to grow beyond the shame and the guilt, and to learn how to go deeper, and to try to continue the conversation and to bring something I guess to the table. I don't know if that's like a great thing to say either, but yeah. So for me, it was just not getting them all at the same time, but just learning from them as I got them, and really trying to take something away from them. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yes, of course. Because the question is really emotional wellness, something that's Carrie's right. Like, I don't know, I wasn't really taught emotional wellness or how to do that. That's something I had to learn and grow into. And it does. It's like, okay, over here, I had this sense of safety, or I felt like I really, didn't have to worry about food, water, finances, bills. And so I was able to focus on this. And then I realized that this took away over here from being able to focus on work and whatever. So like it is a full person, right? There's this wholeness that needs to happen in order to really feel well. And I think that identifying which parts were missing for you is part of that process. So I don't think you missed the question at all. I don't think you did. I think you got it. And I think the other aspect there that was acknowledged was the idea of disconnection, right? Stephanie, it felt like you were getting into that a bit, of like how having all of this taboo separates. And if we're talking about suicide, there is a big piece, I think, of feeling alone. Addiction as well, of feeling like you can't connect with other people, or like you need to be isolated, or you don't deserve this opportunity to be loved. So I think that's a really important aspect here to talk on, if anyone has any thoughts about how, and maybe it's how we create connection. Maybe that's the question. Carrie, what do you think? Can you jump in on that?
Yeah, I was thinking, I actually, in some ways, retreated. I went hiking. I did a lot of hiking, and I think what happened was when I was out on trails, I could be alone with my own self and figure out the feelings that were mine, and not have to deal with all these other people who were telling me what I should be thinking or feeling. I mean, I questioned a lot. I was never angry losing Ben. People were like, "Oh, aren't you mad?" I'm like, "No." And then people asked me, some of the questions that I got were just, did you see anything? And I sometimes I wanted to let the sarcasm fly. I have a dark streak a little, and I just want to be like, yeah, he left us a sign and we ignored it. I mean, like, why would I think? So I wanted to get away from that, right? I needed positive things, and the one positive thing that I could think of was going hiking, because my son loved being outside, and so did I, and that was our place. And what I found was, while I was out there alone, I found him. I found that connection. I connected with myself, and I connected with Ben, and I started writing about that. That's kind of where I, and I think that it's that the piece of the expectations. I mean, Stephanie, you mentioned like the way people see addiction, that's the way people see suicide too, right? They have all these judgments about it because they don't understand it, and it's uncomfortable, and it's big and scary. And so we fill that, society fills that space with expectations that are inaccurate. And then what I did was I retreated from it, and I made space where I could figure out the way I felt about it. And once I had my own feelings sorted out and my own thoughts sorted out, then I could sort of come back and start having a conversation and say, no, what you're saying isn't really all that accurate. Here's my experience. And I always try to center it on my own experience, because I didn't want to give people the experience. Like, I try not to make assumptions, right, about other people, because I've had so many people make assumptions about me. And so I think that, once I had sorted out and I had my own kind of idea, then I could start allowing people to sort of back into my experience, if that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely. Connection for you required connecting to yourself first.
Yeah. And I had to push out like all the other things, people telling me what to do, what to say, and what to feel. And once I had it, it was like, oh, this is who I am. This is me. I understand where I'm at. Now let's have a conversation about where you're at. And that was really important. And it took me a while. It took me a while to sort that out as a survivor of loss, So,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts there that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, loneliness is all over this. It's everywhere. You're lonely if you're struggling with this in silence. You feel like you're the only one who has ever felt this way. You're lonely in grief. You're lonely when you're trying to figure out how to help somebody who you love. There are real expectations around what we can talk about and what we can't talk about, and what is okay and what is not. And, like Carrie said, how we should feel about things and how we shouldn't feel. And it's a lot. It feels really isolating when you're going through something like this. What I have found is similar to what Carrie said. When you start putting your story out there, when you start talking truthfully about where you are, people come and they say, that's how I feel. You said how I felt. You know me, right? And that's how we connect to each other. That's, so much of what we did with Last Day in season 1, I was like, I don't know who's going to listen to this show. Maybe my mom, maybe, and maybe some friends, right? And what happened is like millions of people listen to the show, and they write me messages and emails and voicemails, and they say, like, I listened to your show and I felt less alone. I felt like I was understood. And that's really powerful. I also, I just had an experience yesterday, where a very dear friend reached out and texted me and said, we have another friend who's suicidal right now, really struggling. And I don't know what to do. What do I do? How do I help? Should I fly out there? Should I, and I think a lot of people feel that way. There's a paralysis around, I know something is wrong, but I don't know what to do. I'm not a mental health professional. I don't have a degree in this. What do I do? And I said, you know what? I have a theater degree. Like, I don't know what to do. I know that I've had tons of really impactful conversations. And here's one episode you can listen to where we really dig into like that moment of crisis and QPR, question, persuade, refer, and how you can really help someone in the moment, which feels really counter to what we think, which is that if I say, are you thinking about killing yourself? That I will trigger something within someone else. It's like completely the opposite. Like, give people the space to talk about how dark they're feeling, about how hopeless they're feeling, about how they want to end it all. Like, let's say that out loud. And I sent him the episode and he listened and he wrote me and said he was sobbing. He said, I have so much clarity now about what I can actually tangibly do in this moment. And I'm not feeling so like constrained anymore. And that's just really powerful to be able to share something like, maybe this will help you. It helped me, right? So I don't know, more of this, what you're doing right now. This is good.
All right. What is okay to say and isn't okay? In your experience, what is and isn't okay to say? any of you, I guess.
I mean, I have tons to say about this. I learned so much about it, but I don't have. So I want to be quiet though and give you all space to talk. But I'd love to talk about QPR in a moment because it's amazing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I had someone tell me not. I mean, I'm a teacher. I teach high school. Teenagers. It's a risk factor, And I had someone tell me not to talk about Ben. It's just like the kids all know my experience. It's out there. I don't stand in front of my class and be like, I lost. It's not that way. But I have this experience, and it is not like you're not going to make somebody more likely to attempt suicide by asking them, are you thinking of harming yourself? That's like one of the most important things that people need to understand is that you don't make somebody more likely to act by talking about it. You're giving them an opening to say, you know what, actually, I'm really unsafe with myself right now. And that, you need to respect that if they're already thinking about it, you asking about it shows that you're caring. It shows that you want to know. And it's not saying, the suggestion's already there. If they're thinking about it, they already have the suggestion.
That's right.
And I think like that's something that people, I've heard it called the awkward conversation. It is the QPR. It's like to question them. And then, like, no, don't do that. Here's what we can do. Let's put a safety plan in place. Let's try to figure out how we can keep you safe until you're able to keep yourself safe. That's if we could just do that, we know that like I've done a lot of reading and I've listened to your podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm one of those strangers who actually, but I think we need to really have some honest conversation around it. And what you can say is, are you thinking of harming yourself? What you can say is, I lost my son and I don't want to lose somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
What you can say is, you matter to me and I want you to stay. What can we do to get you to stay? What do we need to do? And respect them, respect their experience. I think, some of the language you use, I have a real problem with contagion as a word, right? I'm an English teacher. Words have connotation, and that is such a negative connotation,
Absolutely.
If we could say increased risk, to me, that would be better than talking about contagion. Oh, it just, that's one of those words that I just really wish we didn't use.
Totally.
It jars me every time I hear it. And I think Ben didn't talk to us about it because he was trying to protect us from the pain of it and what he was, and he was a guy that and I feel like we need to tell people it's okay. You can talk, you can express your darkness and nobody's going to fault you for it. We're not going to panic. We're going to figure it out. And too often our society resorts to panic,
Yes, absolutely.
And if we need, if we can just get to a space where you can talk about suicide the way we talk. I mean, we used to whisper breast cancer, right? It's cancer. And we've come a long way talking about cancer, we need to not whisper about suicide, about drug addiction, about any of these diseases of despair. You could have a conversation and not freak out and not have the shame of it.
Yeah. I think that was really good. It was quite good. I think you're totally right in terms of like, someone's already thinking about dying. They really want to die. They really want to kill themselves. You saying that isn't adding many thoughts to it. Like, they've already got all of the thoughts. There's not a lot of thought to add to it. So, and given the level of suicidality, I suppose, where they're at in that, they've got all the plans too on how they're going to do it. So there really isn't much, I think, risk there to ask the question. I think that's true. Garen, in your lived experience, what felt good? What felt good when you were in a dark spot or where you were struggling, for people to ask you or to help you?
Well, I don't know. So like when I was in that dark place, because that was back in 2017. I can't really say anything felt good then, but I can like really go into like what feels good now. Whenever I'm in a dark space now, I don't even have to wait for someone to ask me like, "Hey, are you having those dark thoughts or thoughts?" I know I can go up to someone and be like, "Hey, these are the kind of thoughts that I'm dealing with right now. This is where I'm at. I just want someone to listen to me." And really, it's the people that really know me and know how I function and know what I need before I even ask for it. That's kind of what like makes me feel good. Like I have my friends that I can go to. I can talk about the stuff that I need to talk about. I can cry, and they don't have to ask me if I want to hug. They'll just hug me. Or if they know that I don't feel like talking about something, they'll ask me if I would rather watch a movie or like go for a walk or play video games or something. They'll I don't want to say like distract me, but they'll just try to do something to so that they can spend time with me, because that's kind of how I deal with that. Like I'm someone who needs to spend time with someone else when I'm in those kind of dark places. So yeah, that's kind of what makes me feel good. And not to backtrack to everything that Carrie and Stephanie were talking about, but
Go
I just
ahead.
thought they both had really great things to say. And going back to what Carrie was saying about making it more acceptable to like talk about mental health and suicide, and to ask the question, are you thinking, or like what was, I don't remember how the question was phrased, but to talk about that stuff and to ask those questions. I know for me in the past, just to kind of give you maybe the other side of it, because I was so afraid of people wanting to just shoved me into like this plan to make sure I was taken care of so they didn't really have to deal with it. I felt kind of afraid to answer their question whenever they asked me if I was having harmful or suicidal thoughts. I would automatically say no, because I didn't want to be shoved into that plan, like I kind of just mentioned. But I feel like, as Carrie was saying, we're kind of moving more into a place where it is acceptable to answer that question. And so I think as people continue to show that it's okay to ask that and to answer that, I think there will be less of a stigma or a fear to answer that question, if that makes sense.
It does, for sure. And I also think that you've reminded me of something. I haven't really talked about my stuff here, but I work in this field, and so I have to do these suicide assessments, right? Especially I work with people with addiction, and so this is a really common thing in my work and my life, regardless of my own personal experience with it. And there is fear there, even in a mental health setting, that there will be punishment for being suicidal. And I get that, because from my standpoint as a professional, there is a point at which I have to make the decision, I don't think this person's safe, and I need to put them somewhere where they'll be safe. But from the other end, that can really feel like being punished. They're going to stick me somewhere. And so I guess my question is, if we're going to make this a safer thing, if we make this less of a whisper, how? How do you think we should?
Can I start? I think kind of going back to what Carrie was saying when we started this conversation, not putting assumptions on how someone should feel when they are going through either suicide or are a survivor or someone who has committed suicide, allowing that person to express what they're feeling without the like all the assumptions and things of that nature. I think that's going to help a lot. And then also, I think what, I don't really know how to explain this, but I think there's a way to start these conversations and to have these conversations and to have the people who are experiencing these things not have that fear of being stuck away somewhere, or to have that not feel as a punishment. I think it really just it boils down to like how the conversation is, how that environment around the conversation is, and just like the overall tone. I don't know if that's a good answer, but I feel like that's why I think I'm very much a tone person. And so as long as the atmosphere feels really safe for me, no matter what the outcome of the conversation is for me, I think I would be more willing to embrace it depending on like how safe I feel.
No, I think that's a really good answer. Because I've recently had a work experience where someone lied in their assessment. And it was in kind of a crisis moment, and I had to have that. I was having that conversation, and really it was the fear of, you're going to think something and then you're going to punish me for it. And I think that we talked about earlier, language matters, connotation matters. If people think you care, that matters. So I think that was a really good answer, Garen. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I think also like acknowledging your own discomfort is really important. So saying like, I don't know how to ask you this. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and I'm so sorry if I am. I don't know how to do this professionally, but I am worried about you. I love you. I'm afraid that you're going to kill yourself. I'm just going to say it, right? And acknowledging your humanity in that conversation. And if that's too intense, saying like, you know what? I am so uncomfortable asking you this. I feel this is, I can't, but are you okay? Are you, I'm feel, it breaks down that barrier, and it gives them permission to be honest about where they are, right? If you open the conversation like, I don't know how to ask you this. I am not a professional. I'm worried that you're going to kill yourself. Are you thinking about this? And you get past that moment, like no one said these conversations are supposed to be comfortable. They're not. They're going to be mercilessly uncomfortable. But like, okay, keep going through that, right? Like push through the discomfort. I had a wonderful mental health professional on my show. Her name's Tara Consolino. She works for the VA. She's masterful at this. And she taught me everything I know about it and gave me so many scripting points, right? Bullet points that you can use. I'm wondering if you're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you feeling suicidal today? Have you been unhappy lately? Have you been very unhappy? Have you been so unhappy that you're thinking about ending your life? There are degrees to which you can sort of dive into the conversation. And what Carrie said is like, you start with that uncomfortable, you connect, right? You establish this connection, and then you have to persuade them. And it's not like, I need to persuade you to live the rest of your life right now. I need to keep you safe right now. I need to keep you alive today, right now. So can you give me today? Can you give me this week? Can you give me time to hear you out? Let's try to make a plan, right? So, being with them in the space where they are is just so helpful for people. And yeah, that like establishing that connection. I see the comment, so hard, like horribly hard. But life is really hard. It's all hard. And if we kind of acknowledge that to each other, if you can plant one teeny tiny seed of hope, just like the smallest one, and maybe that's just like, I'm here for you. I'm going to follow up with you tomorrow. I'm going to call you. I'm going to text you. I'm going to show up at your front door. I'm sorry if you don't want me to, but I'm going to. I'm going to be super annoying. I always use humor in everything I do. So I would use humor here too, but like you lean in authentically to wherever you are. And then I think the last thing that I really took away from doing all this work was that when you call a crisis line, those calls are on average 15 minutes. They're 15 minutes. They are that short. And it's truly like they have more experience having this hard conversation. They're actually professionals. But when you think about like, they don't keep you on for 24 hours. They ask you how you are directly. They keep you safe. They refer you to get more help, right? So if we can like begin to think that we are all crisis responders in the way that CPR if you see somebody like dying on the street, you go administer CPR. You don't like, or you should, start those disco chest compressions and get on in there. If we can all think about ourselves as first responders with mental health, I think we would be able to save some lives. I mean, a lot of experts on the show said suicide is preventable, and I think that's like a hard thing. Like when I did season 1 of the show about addictions, like addiction is preventable, death by overdose is preventable, right? And then they're like, you feel some kind of way about that? It's like, well, but my person died, so I like, is it, But it's like taking harm reduction approaches whenever we can and having these conversations and getting trained on how to have these conversations if you feel, really insecure about it. Now I'm totally rambling, but anyway, that's those are my nuggets.
Yeah. The thing, I had a student, I thought they were in crisis. Something was off, and I talked to them about it, and I went up and I went from honesty, like, where I'm at. And what's happened. And I got to ask, are you okay? And the first response was, yeah, I'm fine. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be reading this wrong. And it was exactly that thing of like, I know this is super awkward, but I gotta, I asked again, and then they did need some help. They weren't like at the crisis moment, but they were, starting to feel that. And they came up to me later and they're like, you're the realest teacher that I've ever met. And I took that as a deep compliment because that's what I try to do. I have to approach from my own sort of space that I'm at. Here's what I'm thinking. Am I right? And try not to project. I try, I'm learning. I do that with my kids. One of my kids told me that I'm like, I like stop projecting, and I'm just like, oof, I really try not to. It's harder with your own children sometimes, but
yes, it is. Cosign.
Stop worrying about me, Mom. I'm fine.
That's literally my job. That is my primary job in the universe.
And I'm really good at it, especially now. But one thing I wanted to say, survivors of loss is something that, again, that conversation, suicide preventable. I didn't prevent it, and so that's one of those places where I think the upstream intervention, right? More services available, more space for people. If we stop responding with, we're going to put you someplace and we're going to take away all your stuff, and we're going to, that panic, that moment of societal, like, oh, we got to do something really big, when, maybe it's, let's go have some tea in this comfy spot until we can figure out how we're going to keep you safe. I just, the more that we can lower the temperature around the tension of it and get to the cause of it, I feel like there's a moment for having, a conversation about that. Does that make sense? Like, Garen, if someone had, if you could say, yeah, I'm having these thoughts. If the answer isn't, oh, let's put you in this room and make you sit here for 48 hours while we try to get you somebody to counsel, and take away all your things and put you in a hospital gown with just a thin blanket while you have somebody sitting there watching you the whole time. That's not the most effective.
Feels bad.
Yeah.
You sound so much better.
and that's the best we got right now, right?
It is. I think there's structurally a lot of things that could be helpful, from starting with teaching children the mental health, right? And not just physical health and well-being, to restructuring our systems for keeping people safe when they're in those high crisis moments, and making those, well, less awful, because there's not the greatest. I think there's some structurally things in addition to being able to authentically approach someone and say, even like, this kind of weird for me, but do you want to die? Like right now? Just wondering, because micro and macro are both important in this, I think. All right. I think I have mismanaged our time a little bit, but we have a few minutes left, and I want y'all to be able to answer the To Write Love in Her Arms prompt for this World Suicide Prevention. And that prompt is, right, another day with you. So let's ask it this way. I want another day with. Fill in that blank, please. Garen, do you want to start? I want another day with blank.
I want another day with watching movies and having time to write. And yeah, so.
Those are great. I like those things. So thank you. Who's next? Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, I want another day with my kids and my plants and my dogs and all the beings in my house who need me. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Carrie?
I want another day with my kids, my husband, I want another day to get outside and connect with the natural world that I've just become so taken with. And I want another day to continue having authentic conversation about life and love and all of those things with the people that I love.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodness, there's so much to talk about here, and I could talk for hours about it, on most things, but I think that's about all the time we have left. Katie, did you want to, was there anything I missed? Do you want to hop back on and let me know?
No, this was a fantastic conversation. I wish we had all the time in the world for y'all to continue having the conversation. But yeah, I mentioned this in the chat among us, but there have been a few comments of just thanking y'all for being willing to have the conversation and sharing your stories. And so I think it's just, that's such an important part of it. Going back to what y'all were talking about earlier with not feeling alone and being able to know whatever your life experience is, whether it's loss, whether it's dealing with the ideation, whether it's dealing with or being someone who has attempted, just knowing that you aren't the only person who exists in the world with that experience is so important. So we're very big on stories here at Tarot Love Under Arms. It's kind of part of, I mean, we literally started because of a story, so they are very important to us. Yeah, we just wanted to be able to create some space around that. So thank you all for your openness and your honesty and being willing to share those things. So that is all. I'll just remind everybody that is watching that you can check out TWLOHA.com/WSPD for more information about the campaign. There are also links to some of the blog stories that we've been sharing during this campaign, and which includes one from Carrie. And also we did a mini series podcast on our podcast about that as well. So we have an episode that touches on suicidal ideation, an episode with Carrie that touches on suicide loss. We're big Carrie fans around here at this point. And then one that came out yesterday, actually, with an author, Bill Konigsberg, about suicide attempt. So feel free to check those out. And then there was another podcast episode the week of National Suicide Prevention Week with a few different voices from folks just sharing messages of hope and encouragement, the reasons why they stay for another day. So you can, as I said, stories are important, so you can check out all of those stories on the website as well. But whatever your story is, for those of you who are watching, it matters and it's important. And finding space to share that, whether it's writing it down in a journal or sharing it with one person or putting it on a blog or sharing it on social media, just finding ways to be able to continue to process and share your story is important. So
yeah.
That's all we got. So thank you to everyone who's watched. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to click this little button and end our broadcast. So do the smile and wave, everyone.